Today we're going to continue our study in the book of James. We have, it's just, I don't know, refreshing for me to be reading this with the purpose of sharing it with you. And I know you guys, you've heard it a lot, especially last year as we went through Hebrews, because it speaks to so many things, right? But these passages right now, you got to know how much I love them. It's just amazing. I'm a very practical person, right? I like to think things out logically, apply things that way. It has to make sense for me, and if it doesn't make sense, it really, really upsets me, because it should. And fortunately, most things in life come, they fall into that logical thing very easily for me, so it's not too difficult. God has given me the gift to be able to see how things work. Sometimes that involves taking them apart. Again, Mom, sorry about the microwave. Didn't know it needed to be put back together. But I've been given the ability to see how things work. And that's not because I studied it real hard or anything like that. It's definitely God gave me this gift to do. There is no reason I should be able to follow these logical connections as fast as I can. This book, the book of James, specifically, is instrumental in helping me to maintain that and have the proper perspective that it's not me. To understand that this is a gift and how to use that gift. Right now, I could be working at, I say working when in reality I would have been laid off by now, but I could be working for companies like Hewlett-Packard, Intel, AMD, putting those skills to work to make quite a bit of money. I could be doing really well right now. But where would I be? My decision even to follow that education was based purely on, I guess I'll just do this. It wasn't God-led. It wasn't something I gave a lot of thought of. Quite honestly, when I got to the end of my high school career, I said, I didn't plan on any college stuff. So I applied to 2 places and got accepted to both, and made a poor decision, to say the least. But even in that poor decision, God sustained me, because it helped me to become who I am today. The book of James, you will know it very well. You should. It is a great guide to practical living. Even if you just take the words for face value for what they say, you will be a much better person for it. Today we're continuing in James 1. I'm going to read from 1 to 12. This is a letter from James, a slave of God and the Lord Jesus Christ. I am writing to the 12 tribes, Jewish believers scattered abroad. Greetings. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has had a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver. For a person who has divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything that they do. Believers who are poor have something to boast about, for God has honored them. And those who are rich should boast that God has humbled them. They will fade away like a little flower in the field, for the hot sun rises and the grass withers, the little flower drops and falls. Its beauty is faded forever. In the same way, the rich will fade away with all of their achievements. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation, and afterwards they receive the crown of life that God has promised to those that love him. So we're starting out talking about verse 5 particularly. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. So here's a question. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Is there any of you who feel they have all the wisdom that they need? Okay? All right. We're all on the same page. So the question is, why do we all lack this wisdom? What is it that impedes us from being wise? Well, there are many things that impede us. Some of us have gained knowledge, right? I was talking about the fact that I'm able to draw logical conclusions and see how things work without a whole lot of effort on my part. So that's knowledge, right? How does that knowledge transmit into wisdom? And when we ask for this wisdom, how are we to ask? Without question, right? Not wavering. Knowing that God will provide it for us. There is many circumstances and challenges that we face in our lives. And it helps to have an understanding of who God is. And that, as we learned in Proverbs not that long ago, is the beginning of all wisdom. There are opportunities in those challenges to forget who God is and how he takes care of us. There are people that you just need to recast the tab or something. There are people who have knowledge in all fields, right? Knowledge of how to, they've studied for years on what it is they do. There are people that are experts in all sorts of fields. One thing that you think of people who are experts is airline pilots, right? What you would hope that they would be experts, right? I think. I don't know. Personally, please have some experience, know what you're doing. So they have a whole training plan that's laid out now, and it's based on an article that was in an aviation magazine in the late 70s. And it was in regards to a study that was done. 20 expert pilots. These are people that were classified as experts. They were expert pilots. They were put into the flight simulator. You guys kind of familiar with the flight simulator? Think like a video game on steroids, right? It looks like a real cockpit, has all the instrumentation of a real cockpit, and it has hydraulics, so it'll move around. You can feel the same sensations, that type of thing. So, expert pilots, they were able to land, take off, do all the maneuvers they needed to avoid terrain with absolutely no issues in clear weather. In clear weather. Not a problem. Then they took these same people that were rated as experts and they ran them through storm scenarios. And every single one of them crashed repeatedly in all types of different storm scenarios. Now, why is that? Well, there's knowing how to fly a plane, and then there's knowing how to do it correctly. See, one of the things that they were lacking was the knowledge of how to fly it correctly using their instrumentation. It's actually a pretty famous study in aviation circles. They even have safety videos that are there. They all crashed within an average of 178 seconds. That's less than 3 minutes. Now that's the average. Some of them took a little bit longer, but they even produce a video of this called 178 Seconds to Live. So let's see. statistically speaking.
The sky is overcast and the visibility poor. That reported 5-mile visibility looks more like 2, and you can't judge the height of the overcast. Your altimeter says you're at 1,500 feet, but your chart tells you there's terrain in the area as high as 1,200 feet. Still, you've flown through weather like this before, so you press on. You find yourself easing back slightly on the controls to give yourself more clearance. Then, with no warning, you're in the soup. You peer so hard into the mist that your eyes hurt. You swallow, only to find your mouth dry. Somewhere a voice is saying, you should have turned back. You now have 178 seconds to live. You push the rudder and add a little pressure on the controls to stop the turn. But this feels unnatural, and you return the controls to their original position. This feels better, but now your compass is turning a little faster, and your airspeed is increasing. You scan the panel for help, but you don't find any. It doesn't make any sense. You're sure you'll break out in a few minutes, but you don't have a few minutes. You now have 100 seconds to live. You glance at your altimeter and are shocked to see it unwinding. You're already down to 1,200 feet. Instinctively, you pull back on the controls, but the altimeter still unwinds. The tack is in the red, and the airspeed's almost there too. You now have 45 seconds to live. Now you're sweating and shaking. There must be something wrong with the controls. Pulling back only moves the airspeed deeper into the red. You can hear the wind tearing at the airplane. You have 10 seconds to live. You see the ground. The trees rush up at you. You can see the horizon if you turn your head far enough, but it's at a strange angle.
– 178 seconds to live. Oh, I don't want to hear it again. Thank you. So what were they lacking? Pretty good. An understanding of how their tools work. I know it was kind of a little hard to hear. I'm really disappointed in our audio on that. But quite honestly, if you listen very closely, you could have heard him saying, you turn the controls back because it feels more natural. This is a key, not just in flying by instruments. By the way, if it feels natural and you can't see what's going on, it's probably not. You should always, if you want to be pilots, pay attention to what your instruments are saying. The likelihood that they're wrong is a lot less than the likelihood that you're wrong, just so you're aware. All right? So, anybody want to be a pilot? No, okay. Not with 178 seconds to live. Because of the feeling. This is why pilots wreck. This is what happens. So, do any of you lack wisdom? You see, we have things that are all around us on a regular basis that say, this is the way the thing should be. And some of it feels really good to us. It just makes sense. So the question is, do we know how to read our instrument panel and go against that natural feeling? Many of us have a struggle with that. I know I struggle from time to time. This is the way that I should be doing things, but this just seems more comfortable to me. This seems a lot easier. Fortunately, God is a lot kinder than your airplane is, and I have more than 178 seconds to live. But we find ourselves on a regular basis in cloudy weather. We find ourselves in all sorts of storms, right? Consider it joy when you encounter trials of various kinds. We are in a constant place. We live in a world that is filled with all sorts of storms and trials. We surround ourselves every day with people that don't know who God is, that would give us direction, because you know what? This is what feels good to them, right? That is why we have an uptick, a more awareness in things such as, homosexuality, the worship of money, the worship of humanity, the worship of the goddess. These things feel good. Dare I say, they make you feel happy. That fleeting moment of happiness that everybody is looking for. James tells us, if we want to be able to weather the storm, what do we need to do to gain those things that we are lacking? Ask of God, who gives how? Does he say, I don't know if you can handle this. Let me just give you a little bit so you can try it out and see if you like it or not. God gives abundantly, and he will not rebuke you for asking. And it's not just wisdom that he gives you. It's not just wisdom that you can ask for. As God gives this wisdom generously and abundantly, he gives you other things. If you need peace, according to Philippians 4:7, he gives us a peace that passes understanding. If you need strength, this one everyone should know, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. If you need comfort, he is the God of all comfort. 2 Corinthians 1:3 and 4. Blessed be God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our tribulations, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble, with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. Gives us so much that we have enough to give to somebody else. God gives abundantly, and he gives generously to us. So please do not fail to ask God. One of the common things that you'll hear everyone go, oh, is if you ask for patience. And you know why that is. Because God gives you patience in abundance. And that means that you're put in situations that will help to hone your usage of the patience that God gives you. Remember, anything that you ask God for, he will give you what you need. But it's not just, boom. In order for anything to be lasting, there has to be an understanding of how it actually works. In order for those pilots to know how to survive that 178 seconds, there has to be an understanding of how their instrument panel works. So God doesn't just give us the tool and say, there you go. He gives us the tool, says, there you go, and then he gives us an opportunity to learn how to use the tool. So ask for wisdom. Do so without flip-flopping, and God will give it to you abundantly. But be prepared then to use that tool. There are several roadblocks that come up. Things that would prevent us. The first thing is that lack of faith. Remember, it says, don't be flippity-floppity. I may be paraphrasing, I'm not sure. Maybe there is a translation that says that. But don't be one who is divided. You need to be fully invested in the fact that you have asked God for this. You need to take hold of that. You have to have faith that you will be given what you have asked for, that God will deliver it to you. Another stumbling block. We live in an unfair world, right? It says right here in verse 9, believers who are poor have something to boast about, for God has honored them. And those who are rich should boast about how God has humbled them. So the world is unfair. We have rich and poor. We have people that seem to be doing rather well by worldly standards. And we have people that have to scrape just to make ends meet, that are poor. There seems to be this unbalanced thing going on, right? And that type of thing could lead you to be stumbled. It could create a roadblock for you to gaining hold of this wisdom or whatever it is you have asked God for. But God says to the poor, you are honored. And then to the rich, they should feel blessed because they are humble. We are blessed far, far above most people in the world, but not everybody is going to be incredibly smart or well educated. There's going to be disparity in the world because the world is set up to create chaos and disparity. Don't let that block you. The third possible roadblock after faith and fairness is pride. For they will fade away like a little flower in the field. Think of this. Nice, beautiful flower. As we listen to the rain watering those flowers. Nice, big, beautiful flower. What happens to the flower? The firewalkers passed out roses yesterday, and I just get a kick out of it. Immediately after Sophia had a rose, suddenly she had a stem. This nice, beautiful white rose was suddenly a green stem, just like that. It withers. Madeline's was no longer a straight stem as it was bent because of it being waved around. These beautiful, beautiful things are withered just like that. Is it not so difficult to believe that those that would take pride in themselves, look at me, I'm dressed impeccably. It's not that bad, come on. There's a new standard, polo and slacks. No? Okay. Being dressed in your finest. I talked about it last week, how when I was growing up, we'd go to different churches and everybody seemed to have it together. What was one of the things that made it seem like they had it all together? Everybody was dressed in their Sunday best. This is just their regular best clothes. This is the ones that they preserved for Sunday because they were super fine. That's one of the reasons that you rarely see me in any type of suit or tie, because I don't really have a Sunday best. I don't preserve certain clothes to wear for Sunday when I'm in the presence of God. Because, hallelujah, I'm in the presence of God all the time. He's seen me in some pretty bad clothes, let me tell you. Up until a couple of years ago, I still had t-shirts from high school. It's the truth. Thankfully, the Lord has saved me from those t-shirts. My wife has helped me to clear those things out. But pride is a stumbling block. It prevents us from taking hold of those things. We have received everything from God. With that understanding, you have a better understanding of what you actually need. With the understanding of placing God where He needs to be in your life, you know how to react to things. So ask for wisdom. Ask, but don't waver. I like the imagery of being blown and tossed around like on the sea. The NIV says like the foam of the sea. Have you ever seen especially here, I know it's kind of gross looking, it's that yellow foam on the beaches in Oregon. That stuff gets blown all over the place. And that brings to mind such a descriptor of what it's talking about here. Ask without doubt, and you will receive. So my questions for you: what are the roadblocks that you're putting up for what you've asked God for? I know that sounds kind of weird, but think about this. Why are people afraid to ask for patience? Because they know that they're going to get it, right? So there's a lack of faith that they'll be persevered through that. That's just one example. So think about that. As you get into your cell groups, think about what is it that you need, truly need. Are you prepared to ask God for what you need? And what are the roadblocks to you receiving what God will give you in great abundance? Those are the questions that you need to be able to answer. Go forth.